Well, welcome. I'd like to say thank you for everyone and your promptness today. And welcome to CITRS's quarterly webinar series that we started about a year ago. And we are absolutely honored to be joined today by Dr. Arthur Schwartz, the president of Character.org. Just a few kind of general rules for the webinar itself. Just wanted to make sure everyone's aware that the webinar will be recorded. And the slides that Arthur will be going through this afternoon will actually be also posted on the website along with the video. So for future reference, you'll get an email once all of those items are posted, probably within the next day or so. And just to let you know, there will be a time for question and answer at the end of the presentation. So we're very much looking forward to jumping into this. We want to thank Arthur so much for your time today. I know my name is Melissa Nunez. I am the Chief Operating Officer of CITRS, and I have the honor of hosting this event today. And one of the reasons that we had actually asked that this be a topic of discussion, we're very excited. These are new national guidelines that Character.org has just rolled out. And personally, I think based on the work that we do at CITRS, we take a very much of a consulting approach. And we wanted to try to figure out, as we're looking at providers, especially in the area of character development, social emotional learning, that there are these guidelines in which that we can look at providers that we're utilizing for resources and training. And we want to make sure that have a very comprehensive approach to it. So when we saw these were coming out, we got really excited, had to jump on the opportunity to host Arthur in this platform in this way. And we're just looking forward to turning this over, Arthur, to you so you can fill us in on this great news. So I let you take it away.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm so excited to be here. I want to thank CITRS for inviting me to share these national guidelines with everyone. Right from the beginning, I want to say I'm going to leave as much time as possible for questions and answers at the end. I really think that is when we can really understand how you're making sense of these guidelines and how I could help you integrate them either into your classroom, your school, your district, state. That's what I'm here to do, is to answer questions so you can really fully embrace the ideas behind the guidelines. Before I begin, I'd like to dedicate this talk to Cassie Smeltzer at CITRS. Cassie helped me put together these slides. I'd be lost without her. Thank you, Cassie. So I want to begin by first saying that these guidelines came out of discussions at the board level at Character.org, where we wanted to realize how important it was to integrate, to braid together the 5 competencies of SEL, and what you'll see in a moment is the 4 areas of character. So I want to begin by first recognizing how important those SEL skills, those SEL competencies are. If you go to the Character.org website, you will not see, reluctantly, that I'm a former 9th grade teacher at the School District of Philadelphia. My mother was a 5th grade teacher who became a school principal in the School District of Philadelphia, and my dad was a special ed teacher for 41 years at the School District of Philadelphia. So I know firsthand how important self-awareness is for a child of any age, how self-management is so critical to any student at any age. So I want to first recognize the importance of SEL. But the question is, toward what end? Why are these skills important? Why are these competencies so critical? It's because we are developing the character of each and every young person who we work with. That's the answer. Toward what end? You don't just have social awareness just to have it as a skill. It's to be the best person you can be. That's why we need to figure out a way of integrating these skills. So with that, let's move on to the slides right now, Melissa.
Great. Arthur, just let me know if you can
you'll
see them.
see here as the idea of really the braiding together both the 5 competencies of SEL and the 4 areas of character. I will be going over each of those areas in a second. In your mind, I also want you to be thinking about 2 things as we go through all of the slides today. Number 1 is this idea of character growth. We know what mathematical growth looks like from a 3rd grader to, let's say, a 9th grader. We know what reading skills how they should improve from a 2nd grader to a 10th grader. But what does character growth look like? That's part of what these guidelines are really aiming toward, is to understand developmentally how we grow in character over the K-12 context. I was going to say we should never stop growing in character. That's really what I wanted to say, but I know most of you are school-based folks. But the idea is, how do we really get to this undergirding of what we know as not just teaching, but how can we begin to, and I'm going to use the word, assess and learn whether or not our young people are growing in their character strengths. And finally, as we go through all of these, I am sure you're going to understand the power of student voice. This is really at the core of these guidelines, is offering students the opportunity to create their own character portfolio, their own way of understanding and expressing their character growth. So with that, I like to start at the beginning with some core values, if you will. You can put up all 6, Melissa. Thank you for doing this. All 6 core beliefs. You can just put them up right away, and then I'm going to talk about them very, very briefly. Excuse me, there are 5. There's the 6th.
But there's 6.
Yeah, I thought there were. Folks, we all know that a family is a child's first character educator, that parents and care providers are not just looking at the 5 SEL skills. It's, again, toward what? To be the best person you can be, to be a good person. So that's number 1. Again, if you're on this call right now, you know that character strengths in the SEL is not just, it's not part of the plate, it is the plate. You know, that these are all these skills, all these qualities, these character strengths are critical for student success. And what I mean by success here, I'm going to add this right now because we're on this number 1. As a high school teacher, I didn't want to just get my students college ready. I didn't want to get them just career ready. I also wanted to get them character ready. And later on, I'm going to be making the argument that we also need to get them citizenship ready. And so that's what I mean by student success, which leads to the 3rd one, which is the whole child. It's not just what she knows in terms of math skills or reading or writing skills, but we know how important the school climate is to fostering the whole child. Number 4, I hope that you'll see these guidelines really focus not just on what a child knows or what she feels, but also what she can do, how she applies these skills, how she lives out and practices these character strengths. Number 5, this is the vista. This is the new area of character development. So much of what we do in schools, we're either teaching character or we're modeling character. That is, that character is either taught or caught. And what I am proposing right now, that even at the elementary level, through these guidelines, we can have young people seeking to develop their character strengths. That's sought. That is not just something that the teacher or the school leaders are saying is important. It's something they are striving to enhance, to improve, to strengthen. And last, wherever you are, these guidelines can be tethered, can be linked to your particular program, whatever that is. It'll just complement it so well. So let's begin. Next slide. Here is the conceptual framework that undergirds the guidelines. We know that children and teens develop. We know that they need caring and supporting environments to develop, But this third one, opportunities to learn and practice, this is what is really the guidelines are about. Toward what? Toward a thriving and striving person of character. That's our endpoint. Not that she understands self-management or self-awareness. No, that she is thriving and striving to be a person of character. That's what we are trying to develop. Next slide. So here are the 4 areas of character development that we shared earlier. Many schools focus on the first 2, moral and performance character. I am suggesting that it's important to integrate intellectual character. I'll explain a little bit more, but essential also the civic character dimension. I'm going to be talking more about that later, why the civic character is so incredibly important. Next slide. So what is moral character? This is part of the guidelines that I had to struggle with as we were putting this together, because you could put so much into this bucket. But here is what we discerned as the character strengths of moral character: honesty and integrity, caring and compassion, gratitude. I must say it is the virtue that I have learned to practice over the last 25 years more than any other virtue. I feel like I have really worked on my gratitude muscle. So I think that is a part of my moral character. And courage. Here I say the courage to take initiative, but you'll see later on in the guidelines that it's really courage to do the right thing even when no one is watching. Next slide, please. So now we're into the weeds of the guidelines, right? As I said before, these are developmentally nuanced. So starting off with grades K2, ages 5 to 7, I'm going to give you a chance to see that this is what we want young people to know, to understand. This is the head part, or maybe the heart part. But later on, you'll see the application, you'll see the demonstration of the different character strengths. But here is just to know what it means to be honest and why honesty is a character strength. Number 4, understand why keeping a promise is a character strength. Do our first and second graders know why promise keeping is an important part of their character? How would you go about assessing that? How would you go about inviting the student to demonstrate that she knows why promise keeping is so important? Next slide. Here I use in grades 3 to 5 the word trustworthy in number 2 for the first time. I'm not asking them in number 3 to demonstrate a time where they had the courage to stand up for what is wrong or unfair, simply to explain what that statement means. Again, knowing. Next slide. Middle school. We introduce white lies, number 1. Look at number 4, understand and explain why the expression to get along, go along, prevents some people from standing up and speaking out. Just understanding that. How would you go about, again, these are indicators that allow you to develop ways to encourage your students in your school, in your classroom, in your district, to explain why caring and helping others, look at number 5, should never be motivated by, well, I want to be recognized or rewarded. So now we're talking about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Number 7 is hard. Why? Why sometimes people not express their appreciation or their gratitude? We know through research why, but we're asking students just to think about this as a middle school student. Why do some people don't say thank you? Next slide. And here's high school. How could we create a character portfolio that before the young person graduates, she would be able to demonstrate through her portfolio research on the concept of moral courage, number 3. Number 6, how gratitude holds together and strengthens relationships in her own way. Could be through whatever vehicle she selects, but she would be able to demonstrate understanding of these qualities of moral character. Next slide. And now we've gone from knowing and understanding to applying and demonstrating. Describe a time when you demonstrated honesty. Share an example when you practice caring or you practice gratitude. So it's no longer just knowing, it's through this portfolio demonstrating these qualities of character. Next. You'll see this a lot. Provide in the guidelines, provide an example of a friend or a role model, and then fill in the different character strengths. I love number 5. I always love thinking about who in my life really is a gratitude prodigy, who really practices gratitude. And that inspires me to be like her. Next. If you're talking about portfolio, look at number 1. Asking the middle school student to describe a time when she persuaded a friend not to lie, steal, or cheat. Next. I love number 4. I hope every school right now that is on this call will ask your students to write a letter in high school, it could be in 5th grade too, that expresses your gratitude for how this person, it could be the counselor, it could be the nurse, it could be the cafeteria worker, it doesn't matter, how this person helped you, the 5th grader, the 8th grader, the 12th grader, how she motivated you, how she inspired you, how she's made a difference in your life. A letter of gratitude. So those are all the different indicators related to moral character. So let's just keep going forward on to the next area of character, which is performance. Here I use the word self-discipline, responsibility. I'm going to come back to goal setting at the end, but I think this is an incredibly important character strength that is at the core of performance character, and of course grit as well. But I'll come back to goal setting. As you'll see, I'm only going to be focusing on just one area now for the next 3. Next slide, Melissa. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. And then intellectual character, curiosity, carefulness. Carefulness is really important to me because my oldest son, we worked on his carefulness because he went through early, I would say elementary, middle, and even high school saying, oops, a lot too often. He just wasn't careful with his work. And we really emphasize this part of intellectual character. Open-mindedness, critical thinking, and then on to civic character. Next slide. This is where I put fairness and respect. Now, some people might say that's moral character. No, I think it's really civic character, because when you're talking about civic fairness and respect, it's always in the context of other people, whether it's your schoolmates, whether it's the community, whether it's the nation, or globally. I really think those two are part of practicing civic character, and of course, contributing to the common good. Now we're going to get back and just look at one slide from each of those 3 at the middle school level. So next slide, Melissa. I chose middle school. It's my favorite, even though I taught 9th grade. I really love middle school. I just think this is where this idea of character growth can really be just so integrated into all the work of a middle school. So here is knowing and understanding the strengths of civic character. And next. And this is applying in middle school and demonstrating these strengths. Look at number 3, everyone. Share a time when you spoke up or you took action to prevent friends from engaging in disrespectful, dangerous, harmful, or illegal conduct. Can you imagine having a middle school student create a portfolio where she is asked to put this in words somehow? It could be through a video, could be through writing, it could be other ways where she gets to express a time where she spoke up. Next slide. And now we're on to social emotional learning. Again, the guidelines are going to be developmentally sensitive. It's going to really focus both on knowing and understanding as well as applying and demonstrating across these 5 areas of SEL. So next slide. Even though I wrote all of these words, I, of course, was very influenced by the current research on SEL. So I have the word mindsets in there under self-awareness. And next slide. And again, looking at middle school. So how do we look at self-awareness through a developmental arc? In this case, just looking at the middle school level. There's a lot of words on this slide, so I'm just going to give people a moment to take a look at them. Look at number 6. What supports do you as a middle school student use when you're feeling stressed or anxious? Who supports you? That's self-awareness. Oh my gosh, I don't know. Or just one, you know, again, this is why SEL is so important. Next slide. And again, we're talking about a growth mindset here, that I may not always show patience, the middle school child might say, but I can learn patience. I can become more patient. That's the muscle that I want to strengthen. That's part of what this character portfolio is all about, related to these guidelines, an opportunity for the student to own her own character growth. Next slide. Social awareness. And next. So much schools really do focus on relationship skill building around peer pressure. But I like to end this presentation before we get to Q&A with the next 5th dimension of SEL. And for those of us who have been in this field for a long time, next slide, you'll know that it used to be just 4 dimensions of SEL, and this last one was added. And again, it's part of that toward what? Even social emotional learning experts knew that it's managing your emotions toward what? Being responsible. And so I'm going to focus just a little bit on this 5th competency of SEL. And again, looking at the middle school. Well, no, actually, go to the next slide. So I actually decided not to do middle school, but start and look at it all the way through. I love number 3. That's my favorite. I don't know, of all the different indicators, explain one social norm at school and the reason for that norm. You know, so just learning the language of what's a social norm, that we don't litter or we don't run in the hallways, and asking the child to really, for herself, explain why we have that social norm. Next. You'll see I'll keep coming back to number 1. What's one ethical principle, since that's the word that's used in SEL, ethical principle, you wish everyone in the world would follow? And here, those are some examples. Next slide. My friends at CITRS were responsible for number one. So that PTI decision-making tree, I had not heard of before I started doing the research on this, but the idea is that you put the ethical principle first, honesty, helping others, and then you put the team or the group second. What is important to the team or the group that I'm a part of, and then I'm last. I think many young people, that's not how they think. They're so self-centered, and I think these skills are helping them become other-centered. So important. Number three, write about or share a principle you want to live by that you learned from a family member, from a book, from a movie, from personal experience. So again, this idea of you are integrating into your, if you will, your moral compass, lived experience. Next slide. So we come back on number 4 to social norm. A time where you upheld, a time where you defended a social norm when somebody in your peer group, your friend group, was ignoring it or violating it. I also want to focus on number 5 for just a moment. We often know knowledge, what's the right thing to do. We also feel it in our heart, but we can't. We freeze and we make a different decision. This is my own personal research. It's called the decision action gap. I know what to do, but I don't do it. And again, helping young people understand how to cross that gap. Number 7, explain to someone who looks up to you how you would respond if you learned that a friend was going to cheat on a test, or you learned that a friend was going to shoplift, or your friend was going to ask you to lie to him for him or her. How would you talk to a younger person, a younger sibling, a next door neighbor about, well, when I'm in those situations, this is what I do. So again, the ability to demonstrate, to talk to somebody who looks up to you, how to do the right thing. So this is an overview of the guidelines that we have put together at character.org. I like to end by just this final slide of how to really crosswalk SEL and character. Again, begin with the end in mind, which is these character strengths. That whether you are working in an elementary, middle, or high school, that when your students are about ready to graduate, that they're able to demonstrate these strengths, the growth that they've had, whether it's patience, whether it's time management, honesty, curiosity, that you're able to really know that that's the end in mind, these strengths that we are able to kind of put in our toolbox, help them put in their toolbox wherever they go, whatever they do. Next. I think, you didn't see all of the indicators. It's comprehensive. It really goes from those 4 areas of character to the 5 skills of SEL. Be intentional of how you can integrate these indicators, these guidelines into your school, into your classroom, into your district. How do you want to start? How do you want to develop these guidelines as part of what it means to be a, if you will, school of character? Next. So much of character is about thinking and feeling, but we don't emphasize the doing. We don't emphasize the application, the demonstration of day in, day out, the students are doing character. And that's so important. That's the only way you build the muscle. Next. I said I was going to come back to it. I really think this is where as I said, the horizon is for character education, is this emphasis on, we know with personalized learning that this is already happening on the academic side. we need to figure out a way to establish students setting goals for themselves in terms of their own character growth. What strength do I want to develop this month, this fall, this spring, this summer? And really finding ways to operationalizing that. Well, if you do, you want to do X, Y, and Z, but also holding the young person accountable. How are you doing? Are you making progress? Student goal setting is it's the vista. It's the new area of opportunity for all character educators. Hope you agree. And that's it. So I don't know how long that was, Melissa, but I am ready to rock and roll with questions right now. I hope this has stimulated people and we can begin to have you look at some of the questions and I can give answers. And if you could give the name of the person who is raising the question so I could answer her or him more intentionally.
Bear with me one moment. So I just want to pull up the questions that we're getting. Let's see. Okay, so here's some questions just regarding the format of today. So just a heads up, these slides will be available. Arthur, there's a lot of questions on that. I'm just getting a chance to raise questions. So these slides will be available. And actually, I just wanted to make note too, please visit character.org's website, obviously for the full document of the CSED guidelines so that you could download that as well. All right, so here we go. Question we've got from Kelly is, what is the most effective way to use these standards to assess the success of a character initiative in a school?
I think that's such a great question. For those of you who are involved in becoming a National School of Character, you know about our 11 Principles Framework. You know that Principle 11 is about assessment. But so often the assessment doesn't focus on the individual growth of the child. And that's where I think these standards can really fit in, that maybe not across all 4 areas of character, not across all 5 areas of SEL, but for a district or a school to choose 1 or 2 areas and be more intentional about whether it's honesty or whether it is contributing to the common good or whether it's intellectual curiosity, that you're really going to focus on those and invite students to demonstrate that they are growing in those particular areas of character, those particular character strengths. So I would say start small, but be intentional in your assessment so you really know by the time she's 5th grade that she has developed those strengths and that these indicators are a way of assessing her progress.
Thank you, Arthur. Got a comment. That was fantastic. Thank you, Arthur, from Mike. Had to pass that on. Okay, another question from Diana. In order to become a National School of Character, should a school focus first on the child, the staff, or the school culture?
School culture. I really do believe that character is both taught and caught. And that modeling part around catching character is so vital day in, day out at the school. And so all the staff, and I'm talking not just teachers, but cafeteria, bus drivers, parents, that they're all understanding how important the set of core values that the school has identified is to our culture, how we reinforce it, and most importantly, how every adult at the school models it, but not just adult, how every older student at the school also models it for younger students. So I think school culture is the place to begin once you have identified those particular core values.
Arthur, another question that came in from Rebecca is regarding kind of the ages that you had presented on, but asking how can this framework work with preschoolers? Do you have indicators for children who are 3 to 4 years age or 5 to 6 years of age?
Yeah, Rebecca, that you got me. And reason that is such an important question for me is that just several weeks ago, I read all the applications for Character.org's 2021 National Schools of Character. And there were several in there that were just pre-K academies and pre-K schools. And I think I've missed the boat on these guidelines that we do not focus sufficiently on pre-kindergarten. So I don't have a particular answer, except, boy, these National Schools of Character, which we recognized 2 weeks ago, are just phenomenal in terms of how they really embrace core values and how they model it in their pre-K environments. So I do think you need to hold me accountable to make sure that the next version of these national guidelines include pre-K environments and pre-K indicators as well. So thank you, Rebecca, for sharing with me that there's a shortcoming to the guidelines that we need to fill that gap.
Okay, we've got a handful of questions, so I apologize if I do not get a chance to get to everybody's questions. There's some, they keep flying in. So let's see, there is. Okay, so Christine asked a question. Thank you for the comprehensive overview of both character and SEL. How would you define the relationship between character and SEL?
Yeah, that's such an important question, Christine. To me, it's stepping stones. That's the metaphor that I've used, and that the SEL skills, the SEL competencies are stepping stones to becoming a person of character. Mm-hmm. We need those stepping stones, or we're not going to make it across. But stepping stones are just not sufficient. It's toward what? It gets back to that. So the stepping stone model, we need when children are young to have them understand self-awareness and being able to manage their emotions. But toward what end? To being the best person that they can be, the most honest person they can be, the most helpful and caring person they can be. Those are not emphasized in SEL. So those character strengths, that's the so what. It's the stepping stones to what we want, is that this idea of every child, every adult having a moral compass of knowing right and wrong and having the courage to do what is right and wrong. And I don't mean just around ethical. I mean, now is a time for me to say thank you. Mm-hmm. Now is a time for me to be curious. So it's doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. That's not SEL, that's character.
Mm-hmm. Arthur, another question regarding, I guess, more of application from Laura is, how do you help school leaders to see that character education is more than a program or posters on the wall? How do you help them move to a deeper understanding?
Well, I wish my colleague Tamara Nast was here right now, because she is the quintessential saint when it comes to working with school leaders to understand that that it's all part of the tapestry, that if you really care about the child, if you really care about her growth, if you really care about her success, that character is part of that. And I know that educator in that school feels that way. She or he's probably under pressure from standardized testing and other parts of the state legislation in terms of looking at her particular school. So first is to acknowledge the pressure that she's under. That pressure is not just from the legislation, it's also from parents. Mm-hmm. Get my kids college ready. Get my kids career ready. But I think as a nation, we also have to be concerned about getting them citizen ready and character ready. I said that before, but I really believe that. And that has historically been part of the mission of education. And I think we need to return to that mission once again.
Arthur, I was going to say to Laura's point regarding, this, how is it more than just posters on a wall? I know from the work that I'll speak from what CITRS does, that we find that's really important. How do you get to the hearts and how do you support the teachers? And I think that's what we try to focus on in terms of our clients when we're working with them, is how do we understand the pressures that they're going through? Because I feel like our schools are only as good as the staff that's there, and they need to be in a very healthy place. And it's not just about a poster on the wall. It really is changing that environment. So
yeah, it's the school culture, but it's also the teacher who she just wants the child to be a little bit less shy, or she wants that child to be less aggressive, and so it's like, what skills can you give me for that? And posters on the wall is not going to be the answer. And so most teachers care about the growth of their child, of the children that they work with, and we're just asking them to really focus on character growth as well as emotional growth or academic growth.
Arthur, a few more questions. I just want to be mindful of time here. But Perky has a question regarding, obviously, the 11 principles. There is a question about whether or not they'll be updated or changed in any way, obviously, to reflect the new guidelines related to CSED.
Great question, Perky. How are you in Brazil, my friend? It's great that we have somebody from Brazil. So this, every 3 years, the 11 Principles Framework, it goes through, I don't know what you want to call it, a deep dive in terms of, we bring together a group of people to really kind of look at all aspects of some of the assumptions that we're making around the 11 principles. For example, 20 plus years ago, when they first came out, SEL was not part of the language of the 11 principles. So there's always changes. We've gotten so much clearer on what service learning is, and the emphasis on learning around volunteerism and service. And so we go through each of the 11 principles, but so far we have not yet thought how we're going to integrate the revision coming out a year from now on the next version of the 11 principles, how these guidelines are going to be integrated into those principles. That conversation, Perky, is just beginning now.
If we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So we also have Rebecca is from Singapore. And so it is past midnight right now where she is at this moment. So I want to make sure I get to one of her questions. She said, how can we engage family involvement in character building? Parents are the kid, of course, the kids are their first teachers.
Thank you so much for that. I just think that character is just one of those ways that parents are ready to be involved. But I do think there is a danger. And again, I'm only going to talk about the United States. I've not lived extensively in any other part of the world. That there's a sense of parenting in the United States right now that by the time they get to middle school, we almost want to outsource our character development for our children, right? Whether it's the sports coach or the dancing instructor, or any of faith-based institutions or community-based institutions, after-school programs. No, parents are always going to be the child's first and foremost character educator. I think these indicators, I think these guidelines give away an opportunity for parents to integrate this language at home as well. I haven't really thought more about that, but we really have to do more at character.org to integrate parents into our mission and into our work.
Great. And Arthur, I'll end with one final question, if that's good with you.
Sure.
Actually, there's a hello from Hong Kong as well. So there's a very large representation here at the moment. So final question from Jeannie is finally a holistic approach to developing the whole child. SEL, as you say, and these guidelines reveal, is not complete without the 4 areas of character development. Now, how do you plan to make this a universal language, more of the norm and the benchmark and the standard for all schools to adopt? And I feel this is what is your vision for, I think that's more for CSED, and how this will be, marketed or rolled out to, the rest of, apparently, the world, because we're in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Germany right now too. So
exactly.
A lot of interest.
Exactly. And I think the answer to this question, humbly, is both a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach. And the bottom-up is that teachers and educators, school leaders have to say, these guidelines are really valuable. We are using them, we're integrating them, and we need to create sort of exemplars of how schools are using these guidelines from just the school building level. And then at the other end is that we need to begin talking to state and national policymakers about why these guidelines are not yet part of what it means to be fully educated in our public school system. I'm going to come back to the drumbeat that I said before, that it's not enough just to get our students college ready or career ready. We need to get them character ready. And these guidelines are a roadmap to making that a reality.
Well, Arthur, I thank you so much for your time. I think for everyone who attended, we have very active participation. Again, this information will be coming out on the CITRS's website. There'll be an email since you registered. You'll receive a copy of that where it's located, along with the slides. Like I said, I encourage you to please check out the actual guidelines directly on character.org's website. I believe they're right down at the bottom, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Arthur,
On the
where they're
homepage.
located.
Yep.
Yeah. On the homepage. So please do that. And I thank you again, Arthur, for your time and sharing with us today. Very excited to just be at the forefront of this and hear about it first and foremost. So thank you for your time, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and a wonderful Memorial Day weekend coming up.
Thank you, Melissa. And again, I want to say thank you to Cassie for making everything possible.
Absolutely. She's spectacular. So thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Well, have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.